Hi, it's me, Marilia. I'm your host, and I want to welcome you to my channel. This is just going to be just a bit of a rant and ramble about the Rex Heuermann case. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're so inclined. I live in Florida. It's hotter than hell out there. I think. I've never really been to hell, I don't think. But it's hot out there. Okay? It's like nothing will cool you off. And I've been working on my garden, so yes, my nails are dirty, my hair, leg hair, who cares? Too bad. But I have some thoughts and I got to get them down on video before I forget them, because I also have dispersed awareness to go along with my senior citizen attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity. I love it. Don't you love aging? Everything comes out and becomes enhanced. It's almost like the first time you smoke pot. you had a sensory overload of enhancement. That's what I'm having. But let's get back to it. So on this crime, on the Heuermann crime, I think everybody has heard about it by now, at least in the true crime world. So what it was that these people started disappearing like in 1996. And it wasn't until 2010 because of one girl who called 911 because she said that someone was trying to kill her. Subsequently, they couldn't find her. And I think it was maybe a couple of years later, she turned up dead. And this all happened in 2010. Maybe, no, that's not true. It wasn't a couple of years later. A couple of months later, they found her and she turned up dead. But the reason they found her is because when that call came into 911 and they couldn't find her, she went missing. So there was a search party put together on the Gilgo Beach. Now, Gilgo Beach, I live in Florida, so Gilgo Beach would be like the strip from, let's say, St. Petersburg Beach all the way to Clearwater Beach. So it's the same waterfront. It's the Gulf of Mexico, but there's all these little towns in between, and so the beach is kind of split up. So that's kind of what was happening on the barrier island there. It's called the South Shore of Long Island Beach, or not of Long Island Beach, of Long Island. And then there's all these little beaches. And so there's an inland community, and that would be where Massapequa is, where Rex lived. But you go out towards the water, you come through these barrier islands, you get to them through these major highways. And there's a bay side, and of course there's a water, an ocean side. More information than you need, but there was a search conducted in one of those barrier islands. There is this very affluent community called Oak Park. There's also an Oak Park Beach along this strip. So on Oak Park Beach, there's also a more inland Oak Park community. It's a gated community. High-end rental homes, summer homes, and things like that for the rich and famous. I don't know how famous, but for the rich. And a lot of these people there, I guess they get bored and they have nothing to do, so they call in these ladies of the evening to come and entertain them. From different services that provide those kind of ladies. I think they're called escort services. Anyway, these entertaining ladies come out here, and some of them have drivers, you know, those guys that manage them. And they drive them out to these houses of the rich and famous, and they attend parties, and then they leave. Well, that's where this girl went missing. Her name was Shannon Gilbert. And it was from one of those houses that she was attending a party at that she called and said somebody was trying to kill her. And then she subsequently ran from house to house. Someone opened, but she was like probably under the influence of something. And she ran away from there, went to another house. That one didn't open the door. But 2 or 3 calls to the police were placed. I don't know how quickly the police came out, but by the time the police came out, nobody could find her. And subsequently, a few months later, she was found, but she was dead. But it was that triggered a search. So the police started searching these barrier islands with dogs. And because after 3 months, if they haven't found you, it's not a search and rescue, it's a recovery. So as they were searching, they didn't find anything except that this one officer took his canine, because he had a canine, and was training him. He was part of that search party, but it wasn't on the search that this happened. But his canine, his name was Blue, and he hit on a cadaver. Hold on, I'll be back with part 2. So I'm back. This is part 2. So Blue hit on the cadaver. They dug up a body, and they found a body. They came out the second day now with a larger search party, and they found 3 other bodies. And these were the bodies that would become the Gilgo Beach 4. A few months later, they also discovered Shannon's body. So there was actually 5, but there's this whole discrepancy that she was under the influence, and she probably died of exposure and drowned. And she, they say, was not part of the murder. But some other private autopsy source said that, no, that's not true, that there was sufficient evidence to show that she died by homicide at the hands of somebody else. So we're not sure how she died, but her death triggered this and the discovery of these other bodies. So eventually they kept searching and searching and searching all those barrier islands, and they came up with 11 bodies. And I guess they stopped there because they didn't find any more bodies. But the bodies began to be identified, and they were all different. So the 4 that they found had very similar profiles. So they were all under 5 feet, and they were all Caucasians, and they were all in the same line of work, and they were all prepared for burial in similar fashion. They were bandaged around the head and bound around the arms and the legs. And they were wrapped in what is termed as duck hunting camouflage, which everybody misconstrued and called burlap. But I don't know if it was actually burlap or camouflage, but it was duck hunting. It was camouflaged print. Anyway, these 4 bodies were like that. So they said, okay, these definitely are connected. In those bodies, they found other bodies, but those were from people who had disappeared many years before, and there was a couple of them that were dismembered. So their torsos were buried in one part of that barrier island, and their heads and hands were buried in another part. There were some that were put in tubs and then buried. When I say buried, from what I gather is that these bodies, the 4 bodies, were pretty much bound and wrapped in this camouflage burlap and then left, maybe submersed in water, face down into the watery marsh. So this is like a swamp, a swampy area, and they were left there. So they were not easy to see because they were wrapped in camouflage, first of all, and then over, the time that they had been placed there, they had been submerged into the landscape. And these girls that they found, one of them had gone missing in 2007, and I'm not sure when the other ones had gone missing, but this was now 2010. So they'd been there for at least a year, 2 or 3 years in this swampy marsh. Then they found Shannon. Then there was some other bodies. Amongst those bodies, there was a male corpse found dressed in women's clothing. So we assume he was a transgender person, and a baby toddler. Now the baby toddler was found on one end of the beach near the Manorville area, and then her mother was found years later at another place, and her body was, I believe, dismembered, but they were genetically able through DNA to identify that she was the mother of that baby, and she was the only African American. And then there was other bodies that were even older. And so the question is, is this all one killer or different ones? You know, if it's the MOs are not the same. Did he start off one way and then figure that it was just too much trouble to dismember the body, and he changed it up, and then he did it a different way? I don't know. Nobody knows. So, but there has been a long-held theory that there's more than one player here. And they even at one time had accused the then chief of police, who was a complete ass. But I'm going to do a video on him by himself, because that was weird. So something is going on these barrier islands. Something's going on in Long Island. And either there's a cult in a club or something. But it sounds like there's a bunch of perverts who live there who enjoy things like snuff films. If you don't know what that is, Google it. Maybe don't Google it, because you'll be a suspect. But it's about actually sadomasochistic forms of torture that end in somebody losing their life, and the whole thing is filmed. And there's people who actually enjoy watching that stuff. There was a lot of pornography, a lot of child pornography, a lot of sadomasochistic stuff. This community has all this stuff in it, which again, there you go. It's a way of life with the rich, isn't it? What the hell? Anyway, I know not all rich people do that, but it just seems that every time you see this kind of shit, it's connected to people who have the means to be able to engage in this. I don't know. Let me not go there. I'm not being judgmental. I'm just being curious about these crimes. So that's the backstory to the crimes. Now, why am I here today? Well, because after that chief of police was put in jail, move forward to 2023. In 2022, a new chief of police came on board. He started a task force focused on this, and a new DA, and they decided they were going to concentrate on this. And for the last year, they have invited the FBI, the state police, the sheriff, everybody and their mother, whoever wanted to help them come and be part of the team. See, the other chief of police, he blocked the FBI and didn't want them to be in there nosing around, because he was corrupt and he didn't want them to know what he was doing. Wait, there's a part 3 to this. I'll be right back. This is now part 3. So he didn't want the FBI nosing around in his dirty business. And so he actually interfered with the entire investigation. It all kind of just went cold, because there was no leads. They needed new sets of eyes. When this team came on board, they came on board with a vengeance. They re-looked at everything. They brought new eyes to everything, and they immediately picked up on a pattern and on a suspect. And they went from there, because they used the FBI casting. They did all kinds of stuff. They identified this guy. And some of the information that they used to identify him had been there from 13 years earlier. That was just not looked at carefully. So they find out who he is. By the time they decide they're going to arrest him, and the reason they decide they're going to arrest him is because, see, he was arrested on July 13th. I think it was on July 3rd. He was out on a nearby park. He says this woman was riding her bike, and he came out of the woods and started walking like behind her, breathing. I don't know if she was riding her bike or she was hiking. She must have been hiking. He came out of the woods. She says he was dirty. His clothes were all dirty. Who was he digging or digging up? My question, nobody has asked, but I wonder. Anyway, he came up to her and kept appearing and wanting to engage her in conversation, asking her what time it was, and just trying to engage her. And she got creeped out. She called her sister, and she was so disturbed she couldn't even walk home. She called her sister to come and pick her up. Her sister picked her up, and then she called the cops and reported it when she saw that he had been arrested. And she realized, oh my God, this was the guy. So, and the cops knew that he had still been using the same burner phone that they had tracked down to some of the missing girls from 2010. He was still in possession of it and using it to hire more ladies of the evening. They got him. And that's where we're at now. And that's where all this other stuff is just vomiting out of his little secret cesspools of crime. And I'm going to be keeping on top of it, and I'll keep on top of it, and I'll come over here and I'll share it as I know it. And if you're interested, come back and visit, because I'm Astro-Sleuthing, an old woman who enjoys true crime.